Hello, everyone. We're going to talk about differences between American and British English. First, Eliseo is going to talk about American English history, and later on, I will speak about grammatical, phonological, and spelling differences.
Well, I'm going to talk about the first American pilgrims. In 1620, the first pilgrims sailed in the Mayflower from Plymouth, England, to America with a crew of 104 members after a voyage of 66 days. Only 52 people survived the first year in Plymouth due to rough weather. When the boat left Plymouth on April the 5th in 1621, she was sailed back to England by only half of her crew. The Pilgrims lived at a time where 1,200 words were being added to the language, and they needed new vocabulary to describe their new world. They had a very different English from the one spoken today, and they were the first generation to use the suffix "s" on verbs, as the tradition was to use the phoneme for verbs in the indicative present form. So, for example, they said loveth instead of loves and runneth instead of runs. Uh, they also started using the pronoun you instead of saying thee and thou. Okay, so the Pilgrims borrowed and adapted several terms from other countries. They borrowed terms from Dutch, like landscape, cookies, and caboose, and from local Indians. Yankee was used, and it was derived from Yankees, which was the equivalent for the common name John Smith in Britain. They used simplified version of Indian terminology, as the locals used an agglomerative and lengthy language. Robocon converted into raccoon. Squanter squashes was converted into squash, as a few examples. Indian terms were used to name half of US states, rivers, lakes, and towns. Few Indian terms were used for everyday objects. Among them, canoe, hammock, and tobacco were used. And countless terms were transformed several times until they finally uh, got incorporated into the language. For example, Manhattan used to be Manhattes and Mantains, etc. And for example, Iowa had 64 spellings. The settlers created many words themselves, joining two known words together, as in grasshopper, mockingbird, catfish, etc. Some terms from the Old World were used to describe different things in the New World, such as hemlock, walnut, laurel, etc. They also created expressions which we still use to this day. For example, to be in cahoots with and to kick the bucket, and some others have faded away. From the Spanish settlers, more than 500 words were adopted. Some Spanish terms were adapted from Indian as well. For example, rodeo, buffalo, avocado, mustang, burro, fiesta, canyon, and buckaroo from vaquero. Mexican terminology was also present, as with stampede, cafeteria, and jack for jail. Rancher from rancho had a Mexican pronunciation, which made it sound like rancor. This happened to many Mexican and Spanish adapted terms. From French, English borrowed terminology for objects like dime, for Indian tribes, territories, rivers, and other geographical features, as with Illinois, Detroit, Des Plaines, and Beloit. Some terms were adapted to English pronunciation, like chaudière to chowder and gopher to gopher. And then we have other sources. For example, the term dollar. The term dollar is a corruption of Joachim's dollar, which was the name of a 16th century silver mine from Joachimsthal, Germany. The first recorded use for the word was in 1553, and it was spelled dollar. For the next 2 centuries, it was applied to English to various continental currencies. and its first use in America was recorded in 1782 when Thomas Jefferson proposed in an article the word dollar to be used to name the national American currency. By that time, the Spanish dollar was already familiar to the American people. In 1785, the dollar was adopted as American currency, though it was not until 1794 that the first dollars were rolled out of the presses. It is unknown where the dollar sign comes from, though it is estimated that it represents the first and last letters of the Spanish pesos, written one over the other. Of all the new words to issue from the New World, the quintessential Americanism without any doubt was okay. It is the most grammatically versatile of words, serving as an adjective, as in he was okay, a verb, like can you okay this for me, an interjection, okay, I hear you, and an adverb, like we did okay. Okay is the most successful and widespread English term, and it has no correct agreed spelling. Its origin is unknown, yet there are three main theories of its origin. The first is that it comes from someone's or something's initials. The proposed theory derives from many people. A Sac Indian chief called Old Keokuk, a shipping agent named Obadiah Kelly, President Martins van Burden's nickname Old Kinderhook, or from orange candle crackers, which were quite popular in the 19th century. Initials from these people were stamped or scribbled on documents or grades and came to be synonyms of quality and reliability. The second, it is that it's adapted from some foreign or English dialect word of place name, such as the Finnish Oikia, the Haitian Ox Case, which is an expensive brand of rum, or the Choctaw Oke. And the third is that it is a contraction of the expression all correct. It is often said that to be the spelling used by the semi-literate seventh president, Andrew Jackson. This is the most accepted theory of the origin of the word, and the word started to get popular as people mocked the president by intentionally misspelling his initials, as in OW from All Wit. OK first appeared in print on March 23, 1839 in the Boston Morning Post. With the passing of time, American and British English started to show significant differences from one another. These differences were related to spelling, grammar, phonology, lexis, and many more. British English, characterized by the large amount of dialects present throughout the land, experienced a growing contrast with the more homogeneous English spoken in the Americas. It is unclear where Americans began pronouncing the word differently from the British, and when the American accent's curve rose, or if it developed as it did. In history of the American Revolution, it is suggested that it was because people from all over Britain were thrown together in America, each of them with their own dialect. Gathered as they were, they slowly dropped the peculiarities of their several provincial idioms, retaining only what was fundamental and common to them all. Still, these changes occurred over time, and it's safe to say that, for example, soldiers of Britain and America sounded identically except in minor particularities, as documented by the English language and the use of English. It has been theorized that hatred towards Britain at the end of the Revolutionary War was such that America seriously considered adopting another language, but there isn't any proof to support that statement. However, many prominent figures, such as Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, and Noah Webster, expected American English to evolve into a separate language over time. In the second half of the 19th century, the US started to receive waves of millions of immigrants from all parts of the world, and the pace quickened further in the early years of the 20th century. This was due to famine, political upheavals, and poverty. Immigrants then settled in numerous enclaves across the country. These enclaves included, well, the Amish immigrants from Germany whose broken English used German syntax. That dialect came to be known as Pennsylvania Dutch, which is a corruption from Deutsch or German. Norwegians in Minnesota and the Dakotas, Swedes in Nebraska, Germans in Wisconsin and Indiana, etc. So, why didn't America fragment into a variety of speech communities after the immigration flood of the 19th century? Well, there are three main reasons why the American people didn't. The first is that the continuous movement of people back and forth across the country prevented the formation of permanent regionalisms. The second is that the intermingling of people from diverse backgrounds worked in favor of homogeneity. And the third, and most important, that encouraged people to settle in a single way of speaking was xenophobia and the desire for a common national identity. People who didn't blend in risked being treated like outsiders. They were given names that denigrated their backgrounds. The usual pattern was for the offspring of immigrants to become completely assimilated by the American culture, to the point of being unable to speak their parents' language.
Okay, now I'm going to talk about grammatical, phonological, and spelling differences between American and British English. Okay, first, let's take a look at grammatical differences. In British English, they replace the en suffix as in gotten by the plain term got. In American English, they didn't use this suffix. The British needn't is rarely used in American English. In its place, Americans say don't need to. See how Americans only use didn't need to when British people have a distinction between need and have, when there was no need but the action was carried out anyway, and didn't need to, when there was no need and the action was not carried out. British, in British English, at is the preposition in relation to time and place, while in American English, on is used for time and in is used with places. In American English, collective nouns are considered singular, e.g., the committee is starting the reunion. In British English, collective nouns can be either singular or plural, although the plural form is most often used. The committee are starting the reunion. See, in this case, we can have committee is starting the reunion or the committee are starting the reunion if we're talking about British English. Also, there's a British preference for formal speech. They use words such as shall, which in American English is not common. Okay, now let's talk about phonological differences. First, rhoticity. GA, the accent used in America, is rhotic, while RP, the accent used in the UK, is non-rhotic, which means that in RP, the phoneme is only pronounced when it is immediately followed by a vowel sound. See the examples here. We got river, rascal, and spread. Here in river, the first sound is pronounced while the second is not, because we pronounced it in RP, which is non-rhotic. Rascal and spread, in both cases, the sound is immediately followed by a vowel sound, so it is pronounced. GA pronounces before a consonant and at the end of the natural, while RP either has no consonant if the preceding vowel is long O, long schwa, or long A, as in bore, burr, and bar, or has a schwa instead, the resultant sequences being diphthongs or triphthongs. Now, where GA has sounds like the long or the short schwa followed by an RP has plain vowels, being the schwa or the long schwa alone. Let's take a look at the examples. In RP, cupboard, while in GA, cupboard. Or bird, I pronounce it in GA, but in RP is bird. Do you see the difference? Okay. The intrusive R of many RP speakers is absent in GA. This is a consequence of the non-rhotic and rhotic distinction. Now, it's important to mention there is a contrast between long and short vowels between both varieties of the English. RP has a marked degree of contrast of length between short and long vowels. This means that speakers do stress the difference between long and short vowels, while in GA this contrast is less evident and non-phonemic. So the IPA length symbol is often omitted when transcribing. And talking a little bit more on the contrast between long and short vowels, we must say that long O and short O before intervocalic have merged in American English. For example, moral and oral rhyme in GA, while in RP they do not. Let's take a look. Moral in RP is pronounced moral, while in GA is pronounced moral too. While in RP, oral is pronounced oral, while in GA is pronounced oral. See how here we have a difference of length, while here there isn't really a difference. Okay, now let's talk about words spelled with A. Several foreign names and loan words spelled with A use smiling A in RP but long A in GA. As the examples, pasta in RP is pasta, while in GA is pasta. Or taco in RP, taco, while in GA, taco. However, in a small number of words, these phonemes are exactly reversed in the two dialects, which is funny. Let's take a look. Banana in RP is pronounced banana, while in GA is banana. And Pakistan in RP is Pakistan, while in GA is Pakistan. Now let's talk about mergers and splits. These are general changes in vowels resulting in different words that would usually be pronounced differently to be pronounced the same. The first example is the cot merger. This refers to the use of the vowel a for the RP o in American English, as the example. In RP, it would be pronounced cot, while in GA it's pronounced cot. The word cot in RP is caught, while in GA is caught. Nearly half of the American speakers do it. Also, we have the example of the trap back split. This refers to RP having the back unrounded open vowel a in many words where GA has a front open unrounded vowel a. Let's take a look. The word trap in RP while in GA is trap. And the word bath in RP while in GA is bath. These changes occur typically, but not always, be careful guys, when the vowel is followed by these sounds, such as an on, pass, or la. Okay, we will mention other mergers. Most general American accents, but not the British ones, have undergone vowel mergers before such as the father-father merger, mirror merger, the hurry merger, and some variation of the Mary merger. These are the most common throughout North America. Another difference is the yaw dropping. Yaw stands for the sound y. It occurs in GA at the onset of stressed syllables after all alveolar consonants, including t, the, z, n, and For example, if in RP it is pronounced you, in GA it's pronounced u. So in contrast, RP speakers, for me, always retain y after n. For example, new in RP is pronounced new, pronouncing the y, but in GA it's pronounced new. In GA, they always retain or coalesce it after t or the. For example, do in RP is pronounced you, while in GA is pronounced do. They retain or drop it after or u. For example, allude in RP is pronounced allude, or in GA is pronounced allude. They retain, coalesce, or drop it after s or z. For example, assume is said assume in RP or assume in GA. Other differences worth mentioning are that the voiceless stops t, p, and k have stronger aspiration in RP. GA accents usually have some degree of merging weak vowels, and that vowels differ slightly in the two dialects. Okay, here are the sources we used, and thanks for watching.
Thanks for your time.